Narcissists do a lot of things. They abuse in a lot of ways. They lie in a lot of ways. They cheat in a lot of ways. Like they add up. There's a lot of different things that narcissists do. There's 9 narcissistic traits that you need to have someone be diagnosed. You need to have at least 5 of them. We have lots of videos that go into the DSM-5 traits, the 9 narcissistic traits, all those type of things. What I want to talk to you today is on the flip side, just kind of like the antithesis of some of those, but like the flip side of it, of like what narcissists don't do, like what is not typical that you're going to see a narcissist actually do. There's nuances to it. There's differences. Not every narcissist is not going to do all 9. So just understand this isn't just saying, hey, it's cut and dried. But I do kind of talk that way. So a lot of times it comes across that way. Anyways, if you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor. I'm a self-aware narcissist on this channel to provide awareness about narcissistic abuse. I'm the founder of Raw Motivations, the creator of the NARC app, which is a community-based program to help people connect with each other across the world, and also the guide in the 45-Day Clarity Challenge, which is a day-by-day challenge to help you break free of the trauma bond, help you get rid of the rumination, and eradicate the triggers that are sidelining you every single day. You can access that at claritychallenge.net. The NARC app is narcapp.com. Anyways, moving on. 9 things that narcissists don't do. One of the first things I want to highlight is all the times give credit to you for your ideas, for your accomplishments, for things that are happening. You see this a lot of times growing up in a narcissistic household, where like say like the dad is like, oh yeah, I taught her everything. Like she's great at this sport because I did this. Like taking a lot of pieces of it. You'll see it in the workplace where the narcissist will take the credit from other people of like, yeah, this was my idea. Like I came up with this awesome idea. It's really good. And you're like, that was my idea. I literally talked to you just about it. You'll see it in the relationship where like you mentioned something and he like scoffs at it and I was like, yeah, that's a dumb idea. And like literally like an hour later or 2 days later comes back and is like, I think this would be a really good idea. And you're like, I literally just said that. Okay, why are you making a big drama about it? Like, I thought it was a good idea. Like, switching it around on you. So, actually giving credit that you have a good idea would minimize the narcissist's ego and sense of importance of like, wait a second, like, I'm the most important here, therefore my ideas are better. So, I can't acknowledge that your ideas are better, so I'm not going to give you credit. Okay? So, one of the things is narcissists don't give you credit. The second thing that narcissists don't do is they don't give you gratitude. Gratitude for you or for anyone else. Reason why is because majority of people in a narcissist's life are appliances or are people that owe the narcissist. That entitlement piece, like you owe me something. Yeah, I'm entitled to you. And so a lot of times you'll see like a narcissist get stuck in this like self-pity, like I'm a victim, especially when we talk about like covert narcissists. I'm a victim, therefore there's no gratitude about anything else because everything has to center around me. Surprise, surprise. Like that's a norm with the narcissist, right? Everything has to center around me, what I want, what is here in my life. Has to be about me. So second thing, you typically don't see gratitude at all because gratitude is looking external of saying like, hey, I appreciate these things here. Narcissist is like, hey, I appreciate how amazing I am. Okay, see the difference? Number 3, emotional nuances. With this, like narcissists don't get hints very well. Like you're hinting of like, hey, I'd love to have this for my birthday. I'd love to have this for, us to be able to connect with. I'd love to grow in this way. Narcissists a lot of times very black and white thinking. You either said yes or no, or you're either good or bad. There's not really this like in between of like starting to learn and understand. And oftentimes they miss a lot of the nuances in the relationship because they're like, it doesn't really matter to me. Like, I don't really care. At the end of the day, they care about themselves. So like, what do you do to serve them matters, but how they actually show up to be respectful, honest to you doesn't really matter. So a lot of times there's like these little emotional nuances that a narcissist won't do at all because they won't pick up on them. Like they're just kind of like oblivious to them. And it's not oblivious that they never see them. It's just in that moment, it doesn't matter and they don't care about you. You'll see those emotional nuances picked up on with their affair partner because they're like trying to do everything they can to hoover to love bomb that person to get that person stuck. Okay, so they do know it's there. Another thing the narcissists don't do, number 4, express real feelings. Yeah, that's a big one. Okay, feelings bring out this aspect of vulnerability and also bring out this aspect of truth. Narcissist doesn't want to have either one of those. Truth means he has to actually own up to the shit that he's done. Own up to the person that he is inside. That's the thing that the narcissist doesn't want to do. I never wanted to do that. I never wanted to open up and actually be honest about what I was doing. That would put too much guilt, too much shame on me. Didn't want to handle it. Didn't want to be with it. Didn't want to acknowledge it at all. Okay, so I was always running away from it. Then you have the aspect of not just like wanting that blame on me. You also have that aspect of vulnerability, which means I have to actually open up about the feelings and the things that are going on right here, right now. that feels like weakness every single time. Like it feels like this like death to self of like, I don't want to be able to open up and be able to tell this stuff. And you see this in a lot of different ways. People think that someone who's vulnerable, they say like, wow, that person's really courageous. I would love to be like that. And they're like, okay, you be vulnerable. And they're like, yeah, no. Narcissist is like just 100 times that. Okay, like being vulnerable feels like death. Of like, I don't want this no matter what. Okay, so expressing real feelings, not so much. Okay, instead is to hide it. To be able to hide what's actually going on underneath, to be able to say, I'm not going to be vulnerable. I'm going to put up this wall, this facade. We'll call it a mask sometimes to look a certain way, when in reality, that's not actually what's underneath. The fragile ego, the lack of confidence, like a bunch of other stuff underneath. Okay. All right. So one of the other things would be what? Number 5, act selflessly. Narcissist doesn't act selflessly. Acting is always in a way to be able to get something from another person. So he's there and he's serving you. Yeah, that's because he's going to bring it back up later, being like, yeah, do you remember when I took care of you when you were sick? And you're like, you made me soup once. Yeah, well, I slaved so hard over that soup. So you should be grateful that I even like took time out of my day to even acknowledge your existence. All right, like that's the piece of it. Like I'm always entitled to another person, always entitled to what you have. Everything else is an inconvenience to me if you're not serving me. Like that's the thought process. Like a narcissist isn't going to act selflessly in the relationship. It still boils back and turns back around to be about them. Now, another thing that narcissist does, this is what, number 6, narcissist doesn't forgive. All right, this is really interesting because sometimes they'll be like, oh yeah, I'll forgive you, but just as a way to be able to be superior to you, to be above. But it's not something that they forgive and forget because they're always going to bring it back up. You see this time and time again where they're like, the past in the past, like let's just forget about it. Let's just move on. And you're like, hey, that sounds great. And then later in the conversation, later in the argument, they bring up your past. But you're like, wait a second, I thought you said we couldn't bring up the past anymore. Well, yeah, but it's about you, and you did this, and this is a pattern that I see, and I see this cycle, and this is a problem I think we need to address. All this kind of stuff will get turned around on you. Okay, narcissist typically isn't going to forgive you because they still want to be able to have something over you to keep that pull, to keep that tug back to of you coming back to them time and time and time again. Narcissist wants you to apologize to them, not them apologize to you. You have to apologize to the narcissist so that they feel superior and so they actually look better in their own mind because someone else is kind of like groveling for them or like underneath them trying to get to them. Is that going to make sense? All right, so then we got the next one, which is narcissists don't self-reflect. Again, this ties into the aspect of vulnerability. If I actually open up that door of my life and step into it, can I actually face the stuff that's inside and not run away from it? Typically, a narcissist is going to run away from it. I know for me, this was a huge step in wanting to run away from it. I sat in front of across from my therapist, and I was like, I don't actually know who I am. I don't know if I'm a man or if I'm a monster. Because all I see when I look at my past is this monster, is this person of not caring, not wanting anything to do with anybody else except to use, manipulate, and abuse them. Like I don't see there being any aspect of being a man. I just see a monster every single time, every single stretch of the way. And she looked back at me and she said, maybe you're both. Didn't really expect that response at all. But for me, it started me thinking of like, okay, that is who I showed up as. How do I choose to show up today? Being able to self-reflect was one of the things that even in that moment of asking that question, my therapist said most people would already be running out of the room because most people don't even want to consider the option that they might not be good or that there might be something wrong with them. Being able to self-reflect is this aspect of feeling unbearable vulnerability for a narcissist that is like, I would rather run away from it than get true about what's actually underneath. Until a narcissist is willing to be honest with themselves, nothing will ever change. Until you're willing to be honest with yourself about what you've been through, nothing will ever change. All right, number 8, things that narcissists don't do. Take responsibility. Like you've heard the phrase, like with great power comes great responsibility. Narcissists want the great power. That's it. No responsibility. They want to be able to control you, but not be responsible for when they've actually made a bad call, when they've done something to hurt you or to affect you. It needs to be that they're powerful, that they dominate, that they're in control, that they're the person that's right, you're the person that's wrong, so they don't feel bad about who they are or what they've done. All right, last thing that a narcissist doesn't do. Apologize. Narcissist doesn't apologize. You're like, wait a second. Mine says I'm sorry. That's not really an apology. But mine says, X, Y, and Z. Okay, but what are they doing to change it? And you see a lot of times a narcissist will say something like, I'm sorry, or like kind of a cop out, like, I'm sorry you feel that way, but not really apologize of saying, hey, I did wrong. Like, I did something that was wrong. Any type of apology that you get is typically on the fake side, not sincere, and I'm sorry you, etc. Sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm sorry that's your perspective. Like all different types of things to make you feel like there's an apology. But the problem is with an apology, you would see something else, change behavior. Or at least, at the very least, you'd start to see a plan of how they're going to change. You normally don't see this with narcissists. It's normally like, I'm sorry you feel that way. I'll do better next time. And you're like, okay, that's not really a plan. We talk to a lot of narcissists that I see this consistently. I'll just do better next time. I won't yell at her next time. I'll respond nicer. I'll be a nicer person. And a lot of times I've called them out on that because I'm like, that's not a plan. Like that's just you hoping you're actually not going to show up toxic next time, knowing that you will. You just don't really care to actually change because you're not willing to put in the work. Narcissists typically don't apologize. So, how many of these happen in your relationship? How many of these do you see that narcissists didn't do with you? Leave a number down below, or write out a couple that you're like, hey, these are the ones that connected, these are the ones that didn't connect it. The reason why I'm asking you to write this down and to comment is because other people need to understand that they're not alone. One of the biggest ways that you can heal is not healing in isolation. Isolation does not help you heal. It just holds you back from understanding that you're not alone and that there's more people out there that are struggling in the same exact way. If you resonate with any of this video and you want to talk one-on-one, we can walk you through some of the healing journey we take people through inside of Raw Motivations. Reach out, go to rawmotivations.com, click on the one-on-ones. We'd love to interact with you. We'd love to help you move forward in your growth, in your healing, and in your change, and develop you into the person that you're called to be.